Have you ever felt that gut-wrenching moment when the person you love most looks at you like a stranger? When everything you thought was solid suddenly crumbles beneath your feet? Let me tell you a story about trust, betrayal, and the devastating power of manipulation. It's about a family torn apart by lies and how sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us become the very ones who destroy us. My name is Michael, and I've been a police officer in Cedar Falls, Colorado for 12 years. It's a mid-sized town nestled in the foothills where most people know each other and we cops usually deal with minor disturbances and traffic violations. I loved my job, loved serving my community, but most of all, I loved coming home to my wife Sarah and our 8-year-old son Tyler. Sarah and I had been married for 11 years, and while marriage isn't always easy, I thought we had something special. We'd met in college, fallen in love over late-night study sessions and cheap coffee, and built what I believed was a solid life together. But on that cold February night, everything changed. I was doing my regular patrol on Highway 287, watching for speeders and drunk drivers. It was around 11:30 when I spotted a black sedan weaving between lanes, going at least 95 in a 70 zone. My training kicked in immediately, and I flipped on my lights and siren, following the car as it continued to swerve dangerously. My heart was already racing with adrenaline, the way it always does during a pursuit, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. When the car finally pulled over near mile marker 42, I approached cautiously, hand on my weapon as protocol demands. The driver's door opened, and out stumbled a figure I knew better than my own reflection. Sarah, my Sarah. Her auburn hair was messy, her usually bright green eyes were glazed and unfocused, and she could barely stand straight. The smell of alcohol hit me like a physical blow, strong enough to make my eyes water even from 3 feet away. For a moment, time seemed to stop. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. This was my wife, the mother of my child, the woman who always insisted on being the designated driver when we went out with friends. She was swaying on her feet, and when her eyes finally focused on me, instead of the shame or guilt I expected to see, there was pure, burning rage. Before I could say anything, she lunged at me with a fury I'd never seen in our 11 years together. Her perfectly manicured nails, the ones I'd watched her paint just 2 nights ago while we watched TV together, raked across my face as she screamed words that cut deeper than her nails ever could. "You cheater! You lying, cheating bastard!" Her voice was raw and broken, filled with a pain that made no sense to me. I tried to catch her wrists, to calm her down, but she fought me like a wild animal. She was hitting, scratching, trying to claw at my eyes with a desperation that terrified me. Other cars were slowing down to watch, and I knew I had to get this under control before someone called it in or started recording. With a heavy heart and hands that shook despite my training, I turned her around and placed her in handcuffs. The metal clicking closed sounded like the end of everything I'd known. The drive to the station was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Sarah sat in the back of my patrol car, the protective barrier between us feeling like an ocean. She alternated between sobbing and screaming accusations that made no sense. "Our marriage is over. I know about her. I know what you've been doing." But when I tried to ask her what she was talking about, who she meant, she just cried harder and refused to explain. I kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, trying to reconcile this broken, angry woman with the person who had kissed me goodbye just 10 hours earlier. She'd been fine at dinner. We'd eaten Tyler's favorite spaghetti and meatballs, helped him with his homework, and she'd even laughed at my terrible dad jokes. What had happened in those few hours after I left for my shift? Walking her into the station was humiliating. My colleagues tried not to stare, but I could feel their eyes on us. Jake Martinez, who'd been at our wedding, quickly looked away. Emma Chen, who Sarah and I had dinner with just last month, busied herself with paperwork. The desk sergeant, Tom Bradley, who usually greeted me with a joke, just nodded grimly and started processing the paperwork. I led Sarah to the holding cell, my hands trembling as I removed the cuffs. She rubbed her wrists and looked at me with such hatred that I actually stepped back. This wasn't my wife. This couldn't be the woman who still left little love notes in my lunchbox, who danced with me in the kitchen while we cooked, who whispered, "I love you," every night before we fell asleep. "Sarah, please," I tried one more time, my voice breaking. "Just tell me what's going on. What do you think I did?" But she turned her back to me, walked to the bench in the cell, and sat down with her arms crossed. The silence was deafening. I stood there for another moment, hoping she'd turn around, hoping this was all some terrible nightmare, but she didn't move. I spent the next 3 hours sitting at my desk, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I replayed every conversation we'd had recently, every moment that might have seemed off. Had I been working too much overtime? Had I forgotten an important date? But nothing explained this level of rage, this certainty that I'd betrayed her somehow. Then something strange happened. As I sat there drowning in confusion, my coworker walked past the holding area. I saw Sarah's head snap up, and she started screaming again. That's her? That's the woman you're sleeping with. I knew it. My blood ran cold as I realized who she was pointing at. Diana Walsh. Diana and I had been patrol partners on and off for the past 3 years. She was a good cop, reliable and professional. We worked well together, but that was it. She was 5 years younger than me, single, and honestly, I'd never thought of her as anything more than a colleague. Sure, we grabbed coffee sometimes during long shifts, and yes, we'd covered for each other when one of us needed to leave early, but that was just being good partners. I rushed back to the holding cell, desperate to clear up this misunderstanding. Diana had heard the commotion and followed me, which in hindsight was probably a mistake. She looked genuinely confused and concerned, her dark ponytail swaying as she shook her head. Sarah, what are you talking about? Diana asked, her voice gentle but bewildered. Michael and I are just work partners. There's nothing going on between us. But Sarah wasn't listening. Her eyes were wild as she gripped the bars of the cell. Liar, I found your lipstick in his patrol car. I saw the text messages. All those late nights, all those overtime shifts that just happened to be with you. Her voice cracked on the last word, and fresh tears streamed down her face. Lipstick? Text messages? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, scrolling through my messages frantically. There was nothing from Diana except shift schedules and the occasional running late or coffee run text. I showed the phone to Sarah, but she laughed bitterly. Of course you deleted them. You think I'm stupid? January 15th, February 3rd, March 22nd. Should I keep going? Those are all dates you were texting her behind my back. I was completely lost. Those dates meant nothing to me. I couldn't remember anything significant about them, and I certainly hadn't been texting Diana. I looked at Diana, hoping she could shed some light on this, and that's when I noticed something strange. She had stepped closer to me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder in what should have been a comforting gesture. But Sarah saw it too, and her face contorted with fresh rage. Don't touch him, Sarah screamed. I see what you're doing. Right in front of me, you're still trying to steal him. Diana quickly removed her hand, but there was something in her eyes, just for a second, that made my stomach twist. It wasn't guilt exactly, but it wasn't innocence either. It was something I couldn't quite name, and it disappeared so quickly I wondered if I'd imagined it. The rest of that night blurred together in a haze of procedure and heartbreak. We had to do a breathalyzer test, which showed Sarah's blood alcohol content at 0.19, more than twice the legal limit. The booking process was mechanical and cold, each step taking us further from the life we'd built together. Fingerprints, photos, personal belongings cataloged and stored. With each procedure, I watched a piece of our marriage slip away. Diana stayed at the station longer than her shift required, hovering nearby with offers to help. I'm so sorry this is happening, Michael, she said, her brown eyes wide with concern. Your wife must be going through something. Is there anything I can do? Maybe I could talk to her again when she's sober? I thanked her, but said no. Something about her eagerness to help felt off, though I couldn't explain why. The next morning came too quickly and not quickly enough. I hadn't slept, couldn't eat, and looked like I'd aged 10 years overnight. I arrived at the station early, hoping to talk to Sarah before her bail hearing, but I wasn't prepared for what greeted me. Sarah's parents, Robert and Helen, were already there, and the moment they saw me, the explosion began. Robert, a retired construction foreman who'd always treated me like a son, jabbed his finger into my chest hard enough to hurt. His face was red with fury, and I could see the vein in his temple throbbing. You piece of garbage! How dare you arrest your own wife? What kind of man does that to the mother of his child? His voice echoed through the station, drawing stares from everyone. Helen, usually the calmer of the two, was crying, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks. But her tears didn't make her words any less cutting. We know all about your affair, Michael. Sarah told us everything. That woman, Diana, how could you? After everything Sarah's done for you, after she gave you a son, this is how you repay her? The entire station was watching now. Officers pretending to work while obviously listening, civilian staff pausing their conversations to stare. Even Chief Morrison had come out of his office, his expression unreadable as he watched the scene unfold. My face burned with humiliation and frustration. I tried to keep my voice calm and low, hoping they'd follow my lead. Robert, Helen, please. There's been a misunderstanding. I haven't had an affair. Diana and I are just partners at work. Sarah was driving drunk, severely drunk. I had to arrest her. It's my job, and more importantly, she could have killed someone or herself. But they weren't listening. Helen clutched her purse like a weapon, her knuckles white. Sarah showed us everything: the messages, the receipts for dinners, the flowers you bought, January 15th, February 3rd, March 22nd. She has it all documented. There were those dates again. Why did everyone keep mentioning those specific dates? That's when Diana appeared again, approaching our group with her hands raised peacefully. I noticed she'd changed into civilian clothes, though her shift had ended hours ago. She should have been home by now. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, she began, addressing Sarah's parents formally. I understand you're upset, but I promise you there's nothing inappropriate between Michael and me. We're professional colleagues, nothing more. Robert whirled on her, and for a moment I thought he might actually hit her. We know all about you, young lady. The late-night shifts together, the convenient overtime assignments. Sarah's shown us the text messages. You might have Michael fooled, but you don't fool us. Text messages. Everyone kept talking about text messages I knew I'd never sent. I pulled out my phone again, desperate to understand. What messages? I asked, showing them my phone. Look, there's nothing here. I've never texted Diana outside of work-related matters. Sarah's voice suddenly rang out from the holding area. She must have been listening to the whole confrontation. January 15th at 11:47 p.m. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. February 3rd at 2:15 a.m. Thanks for tonight. You looked beautiful. March 22nd at 9:33 p.m. Sarah's asleep thinking of you. Should I continue? Her voice was cold and precise, reciting each message like evidence in a trial. My hand shook as I scrolled through my phone again, searching for any trace of these messages. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. I'd never sent those texts. I would never send those texts. Diana touched my arm again gently and leaned in close. This must be so confusing for you, she whispered. Maybe someone spoofed your number? It's easier than you'd think with the right app. How did she know about number spoofing apps? Most people didn't even know that was possible. I filed that thought away as the desk sergeant, Tom, finally intervened. His voice cut through the chaos with professional authority. Folks, I understand emotions are running high, but this needs to move somewhere private. Mrs. Brennan's bail hearing is scheduled for noon. She'll be released then if bail is posted. Until that time, I suggest everyone take a breath and maybe consult with attorneys. Robert's face went even redder, if that was possible. Fine, we'll wait. And our lawyer will definitely be hearing about this false imprisonment, this abuse of power. He grabbed Helen's arm and they stalked off to the waiting area, but not before Helen shot me one more look of pure disappointment that hurt worse than any of Robert's anger. Diana lingered for a moment after they left. I'm so sorry you're going through this, Michael. If you need anything at all, just call me. Day or night? There was an intensity to her offer that made me uncomfortable. I mumbled a thanks and watched her finally leave, noting that she glanced back 3 times before reaching the door. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with questions. Tyler would be awake by now, wondering where his parents were. I'd called my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, earlier to ask if she could get him ready for school, making up a story about an emergency at work. But I'd have to face him eventually, have to explain why Mommy wasn't home. When I walked through our front door, the house felt different. Everything looked the same. The family photos on the walls, Tyler's backpack by the door, Sarah's coffee mug still in the sink from yesterday morning, but it all felt foreign now, like I was looking at someone else's life. Tyler was on the couch in his dinosaur pajamas, the ones Sarah had bought him for Christmas. His dark hair stuck up at odd angles, the way it always did in the morning. When he saw me, his face lit up for a moment before clouding with worry. Dad, where's Mom? Mrs. Chen said she had to help someone, but Mom always says goodbye before she leaves. I sat down next to him, pulling him into a hug. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his mother was in jail? That she'd driven drunk? That she believed his father was a cheater? Mom made a mistake, buddy. She drove the car when she shouldn't have, and now she has to talk to some people about it. But she's safe, okay? She's safe, and she loves you very much. Tyler pulled back to look at me, his brown eyes, Sarah's eyes, full of confusion. Is she in trouble? Like when I got in trouble for hitting Jake at school? The innocence of the comparison nearly broke me. Something like that, yeah, but adult trouble is different. She'll be home soon. We sat in silence for a moment before Tyler spoke again, his voice smaller this time. Mom was crying yesterday. She kept talking to Grandma on the phone about Diana. She said Diana was trying to take you away. I don't want anyone to take you away, Dad. My chest felt like it was being crushed. Sarah had been upset about Diana before she'd even started drinking. This hadn't been a spur-of-the-moment breakdown. How long had she been thinking this? How long had she been suffering with these suspicions while I remained oblivious? No one's taking me anywhere, buddy. I'm not going anywhere. I held him tighter, breathing in the little boy's smell of his shampoo. Hey, do you remember Diana ever coming to our house? Tyler thought for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, one time, maybe in January, she brought cookies. Mom answered the door and they talked for a long time. Mom looked really mad after she left, and she threw the cookies in the garbage. She said they probably tasted bad anyway. January. Diana had come to our house in January and never mentioned it to me. Why would she bring cookies to my house? We weren't that kind of friends. We didn't socialize outside of work. A cold dread settled in my stomach as pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know existed started forming. After I got Tyler off to school, promising to pick him up myself that afternoon, I called Marcus Chen, our union representative. Marcus had been with the force for 25 years and had seen pretty much everything. He answered on the second ring, his gruff voice immediately concerned when he heard mine. Mike, I heard about last night. You okay, brother? Just hearing someone ask if I was okay nearly undid me. I gave him the whole story, from the arrest to the accusations to the mysterious text messages and Diana's visit to my house. Marcus listened without interrupting, occasionally making thoughtful noises. All right, he said when I finished. First things first, document everything. Every interaction with Diana, every strange moment you can remember. Write it all down with dates and times as best you can recall. Second, we need to get those phone records officially. If someone's been spoofing your number, there'll be a trail. Third, you might want to think about whether Diana's behavior has been appropriate. Sometimes we miss things when we're not looking for them. He was right. I spent the next 2 hours writing down every interaction with Diana I could remember from the past 6 months. As I wrote, a pattern emerged that made my skin crawl. Diana always volunteered for overtime when she knew I was working. She always sat next to me in briefings, even when other seats were available. She brought me coffee without being asked, remembered my sandwich order from the deli, touched my arm or shoulder frequently when talking. I remembered the Christmas party 2 months ago. Sarah had been there, wearing the green dress I loved, laughing with the other spouses. Diana had appeared at our table, wearing a tight red dress I'd never seen her in before, and sat down uninvited. She'd monopolized the conversation, telling stories about our patrols that made us sound closer than we were. Sarah had grown quieter and quieter until she'd excused herself to the bathroom. When she came back, she suggested we leave early, claiming a headache. Then there was the time in January when I'd mentioned it was Sarah's birthday coming up. Diana had asked detailed questions about what I was planning, what Sarah liked, where we were going for dinner. I'd thought she was just being friendly, making conversation. But the next week, Sarah had been upset because someone had called the restaurant and tried to cancel our reservation. The restaurant couldn't tell her who had called. My phone rang, jerking me from my memories. It was the automated system from the courthouse. Sarah had made bail. Her parents had posted the $50,000 and she was being released. Part of me wanted to rush down there, to try to talk to her, to fix this. But I knew her parents would be there, and another confrontation wouldn't help anyone. Instead, I called Veronica Harris, the family lawyer Marcus had recommended. She agreed to see me that afternoon, and I spent the time until the appointment continuing my documentation. I went through my patrol car with a fine-tooth comb and found the lipstick tube under the passenger seat, exactly where Sarah had said it would be. It was a deep red color I'd never seen Diana wear. She usually wore clear gloss or nothing at all. Veronica's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown. She was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner that immediately put me at ease. I laid out everything, from the arrest to the mysterious texts to Diana's concerning behavior patterns. She took notes on a yellow legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. First, she said when I finished, your wife drove with a blood alcohol of 1.9. That's seriously intoxicated, and you absolutely did the right thing arresting her. Any other officer would have done the same, and if you'd let her go, you could have lost your job and potentially enabled her to kill someone. Second, these allegations of infidelity are concerning, but from what you're telling me, they're based on fabricated evidence. We need those phone records immediately. She made a call right there, filing an emergency request for my phone records from the carrier. We should have them within 72 hours, she said. In the meantime, document any contact with this Diana person. If she's orchestrating some kind of harassment campaign, we need evidence. Also, I'd recommend you stay somewhere else for a few nights. Give your wife space to calm down and process. The thought of leaving my home, leaving Tyler, made me feel sick. But Veronica was right. The situation was too volatile. I called Mrs. Chen again, explaining that Sarah and I were having some difficulties and asking if Tyler could stay with them for a few nights. She agreed immediately, her voice full of grandmotherly concern. When I picked Tyler up from school, I had his overnight bag packed. He was confused and upset, but I promised him it was only for a few days. Like a sleepover, I said, trying to sound cheerful. And Mom will come get you soon. The lie tasted bitter in my mouth. That evening, I checked into a motel off Highway 36. It was clean but depressing, with that particular smell all cheap motels have. I sat on the bed and finally let myself fall apart. My marriage was crumbling, my son was confused and scared, and I was being accused of something I hadn't done. But worse than all of that was the growing certainty that Diana had orchestrated this somehow. The next morning, I was called in for modified duty. Chief Morrison was apologetic but firm. Given the personal situation and the investigation, I can't have you on patrol. You'll be on desk duty until this is resolved. I understood, but it still stung. Diana, I noticed, was still on regular patrol. Nobody was questioning her. Over the next few days, things moved quickly. The phone records came back, definitively proving that no text had been sent from my number to Diana's on any of the dates Sarah had mentioned. Veronica was ecstatic. This is huge, Michael. It proves someone fabricated those messages. Combined with Diana's undisclosed visit to your home and the planted evidence in your patrol car, we're building a clear picture of manipulation. I also discovered something else. My neighbor, Bill Peterson, was a technology enthusiast who kept his security footage backed up to the cloud indefinitely. He showed me video from January 15th, one of the dates Sarah kept mentioning. There was Diana's white Honda Civic parked outside my house at 6 a.m., 2 hours before her shift started. She sat there for 20 minutes, just watching my house. Bill found another video from the day Diana brought cookies. The timestamp showed she was at my door for exactly 13 minutes. 13 minutes to drop off cookies? He also had footage of someone approaching my patrol car in the driveway that same day, though the person's face wasn't visible. They were clearly putting something inside. Armed with this evidence, Internal Affairs opened a formal investigation into Diana. Detective Joshua Milan interviewed me for 3 hours, going through every detail of my professional relationship with Diana. He showed me something that made my blood run cold. Computer logs showing Diana had accessed my personnel file multiple times, printed old paper schedules we hadn't used in years, and manipulated the patrol assignment system to ensure we were partnered together. This goes beyond inappropriate workplace behavior, Milan said grimly. This is stalking, harassment, and potentially criminal manipulation. We're building a case, but it takes time. Meanwhile, Sarah had entered an intensive outpatient program for alcohol abuse. Her lawyer reached out to schedule a mediation session. I agreed immediately, desperate for a chance to show her the evidence that I'd been set up. The session was held in a small conference room at the courthouse, with both our lawyers present and a mediator guiding the conversation. Sarah looked terrible. She'd lost weight in the 2 weeks since the arrest, and there were dark circles under her eyes. But she was sober, and when she looked at me, some of the rage had been replaced by confusion and pain. Her parents sat on either side of her like guards, Robert still glaring at me with barely contained fury. Veronica presented the evidence methodically, the phone records proving no texts existed, the security footage of Diana stalking our house, the computer logs showing her obsessive behavior, the forensics report on the lipstick that had no fingerprints and contained a perfume Sarah never used. With each piece of evidence, I watched Sarah's face change. The certainty crumbled, replaced by doubt, then horror. When Veronica showed the footage of Diana sitting outside our house in the early morning, Sarah's mother gasped. "Oh my God," Helen whispered. "She was stalking you. This woman was stalking your family." Even Robert's anger seemed to falter, though he tried to maintain his stern expression. Sarah finally spoke, her voice hoarse. "She came to the door that day with cookies. She was so friendly, so normal. Then she said something about how nice it must be to have such a perfect family, but that perfect things were fragile. I thought she was threatening me. When she left, I found those texts on my phone from a contact saved as your name, but She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "The number, it's different, just by 2 digits, but it's different. I was already drinking that day. I didn't notice." The mediator suggested a break, but Sarah shook her head. No, I need to say this. Diana showed me messages on a phone. She said you were harassing her, that you wouldn't leave her alone at work. She showed me these texts where you were pursuing her, and she was trying to let you down gently. I was drunk and scared, and I believed her. God, Michael, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The room was quiet except for Sarah's quiet crying. Her mother reached over to hold her hand, and even Robert's stern expression had softened. The mediator spoke gently. This is a lot to process. I think we should schedule another session in a few days. In the meantime, I'd recommend both parties continue with their individual counseling. As we were leaving, Helen approached me. She looked older than I'd ever seen her. The fight drained out of her. Michael, I owe you an apology. We should have listened. We should have known you wouldn't. I'm sorry. Robert mumbled something that might have been an apology, though his pride wouldn't let him fully articulate it. That night, Tyler called me from the Chen's house. Dad, when can I come home? I miss you and Mom. His little voice broke my heart. Soon, buddy. Your mom and I are working on some grown-up problems, but we both love you so much. That will never change. The investigation into Diana accelerated after our mediation session. More evidence emerged daily. She had purchased a number spoofing app 3 days before visiting our house. She had accessed the department's database to find personal information about Sarah. She had even researched divorce lawyers in the area, bookmarking several websites. One morning, Detective Milan called with shocking news. We found something in Diana's desk, a journal. She's been documenting her obsession with you for over a year. It started as a crush, but it escalated. She wrote about breaking up your marriage, about how Sarah didn't deserve you, about how she would be a better wife and mother to Tyler. The violation of it made me physically ill. This woman had been planning to destroy my family for over a year, and I'd been completely blind to it. The department finally took action. Diana was placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Criminal charges were being considered for stalking, harassment, and filing false reports. The union wouldn't defend her. Her actions were too egregious, too premeditated. Sarah and I began meeting with a marriage counselor, Dr. Patricia Reeves. The sessions were brutal at first. Sarah had to confront her drinking problem, which had started months before the incident, as she grew suspicious and paranoid about my relationship with Diana. I had to confront my obliviousness to Diana's escalating behavior and how my overtime shifts had distanced me from my family. Affairs don't have to be physical or even emotional to damage a marriage. Dr. Reeves explained. Diana created the illusion of an affair, and that illusion was powerful enough to nearly destroy your family. The question now is whether you can rebuild trust. Slowly, painfully, we began that process. Sarah completed her 30-day program and continued with AA meetings. I returned to full duty, but with a new partner, Jim Rodriguez, who'd transferred from Denver. Tyler came home and we established a new routine. Family dinners every night I wasn't on shift. No overtime unless absolutely necessary. Couples therapy every week. Individual therapy for both of us. 2 months after that horrible night, we got word that Diana had accepted a plea deal. She pled guilty to stalking and harassment charges in exchange for avoiding jail time. She was fired from the department, banned from law enforcement, and ordered to undergo psychiatric treatment. She also had to stay away from our family permanently. Part of me wanted her to face harsher consequences, but Veronica advised accepting the deal. A trial would drag this out for months, maybe years. Your family needs to heal, not relive this trauma in court. She was right. We needed to move forward. 6 months after the arrest, Sarah and I renewed our vows in a small ceremony in our backyard. Tyler was our ring bearer, beaming with pride. Sarah's parents were there, supportive now in a way they hadn't been before. My colleagues from the department attended, many of whom had apologized for doubting me. Chief Morrison gave a touching speech about resilience and the strength of truth. Sarah had been sober for 6 months. She'd found a sponsor, attended meetings regularly, and worked through the 12 steps with dedication. Our marriage counseling had evolved from crisis management to building something stronger than we'd had before. We communicated better, set boundaries, and most importantly, we trusted each other again. But it wasn't a fairy tale ending. Sarah still struggled with triggers, especially when I had to work with female officers. I still woke up sometimes in a cold sweat, remembering the hatred in her eyes that night. Tyler had needed therapy too, to process the disruption to his safe, stable world. The road to recovery was long and winding, with setbacks and breakthroughs in equal measure. A year later, I was promoted to sergeant. Sarah was there at the ceremony, proud and supportive. She'd returned to her job as a teacher's aide, finding purpose in helping children with learning disabilities. Tyler was thriving in fourth grade, his anxiety finally fading as our family stabilized. We'd sold our old house, too many bad memories there, and bought a new one in a different neighborhood. Fresh start. I sometimes think about Diana, not with anger anymore, but with a kind of bewildered pity. What kind of pain or dysfunction leads someone to try to destroy a family? Her journal, which became evidence, revealed a woman desperately lonely, constructing elaborate fantasies where she was the heroine of a love story that existed only in her mind. She'd interpreted every professional courtesy as romantic interest, every casual conversation as deep connection. It was disturbing, but also profoundly sad. The experience taught me valuable lessons. Pay attention to boundary violations, even small ones. Trust your instincts when something feels off. Communicate with your spouse, especially when work relationships seem unusual. Most importantly, fight for your family when they're under attack, even when the attack comes from within. Sarah and I are different people now than we were before that February night. In some ways, we're better. We don't take each other for granted, we communicate more openly. We faced the worst and survived, but we also carry scars. Trust, once broken, is never quite the same when rebuilt. It's stronger in some places, like a bone that's healed after a break, but you always remember the pain. Tyler, resilient as children are, bounced back faster than either of us. He still occasionally asks about the time Mom got in trouble, but it's become just another family story, sanitized and simplified for his young mind. Someday we'll tell him the full truth, but for now, he knows that sometimes people make mistakes, that families can break but also heal, and that his parents love him more than anything in the world. I still work in law enforcement, still believe in protecting and serving my community, but I'm warier now, more observant of the people around me. I document interactions that seem unusual. I maintain professional boundaries religiously, and I never ever dismiss my wife's concerns, no matter how unfounded they might seem. Sarah continues her recovery journey. She sponsors other women now, sharing her story of how alcohol nearly cost her everything. She talks about the perfect storm of manipulation, addiction, and miscommunication that almost destroyed our family. Her honesty helps others, and helping others helps her stay strong. We've built something new from the wreckage Diana created. Not the naive, easy love we had before, but something tested and proven. We know now that our marriage can survive betrayal, even imagined, addiction, arrest, and public humiliation. We know that truth eventually surfaces, even when lies seem overwhelming. We know that family is worth fighting for, even when the fight seems hopeless. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment on Highway 287 when I saw Sarah stumble out of her car. How different would our lives be if another officer had made that stop? Would the truth about Diana have ever surfaced? Would our marriage have survived the slow poison of suspicion and lies? I'll never know. All I know is that sometimes the worst nights lead to necessary revelations. Sometimes everything has to fall apart before it can be rebuilt stronger. And sometimes the person who tries to destroy your family actually saves it. By forcing you to confront problems you didn't know existed and fight for a love you'd started to take for granted. Diana wanted to tear us apart, and for a while, she succeeded. But in the end, her obsession only showed us how much we had to lose and how hard we were willing to fight to keep it. That's the ironic thing about manipulation and lies. They only work in darkness. Once exposed to light, they lose their power. The truth really does set you free, even when that freedom comes through handcuffs, breathalyzers, and the complete destruction of the life you thought you knew. Because what you rebuild after the storm can be stronger than what stood there before, as long as you're willing to do the work. And we did the work. Every day, we still do the work. In therapy sessions and AA meetings, in honest conversations and rebuilt trust, in forgiveness given and received. That's what real love looks like, not the fantasy Diana imagined, but the daily choice to show up for each other, especially when it's hard, especially when the world is watching, especially when everything seems lost. Our story isn't unique. Families face tests all the time from 1,000 different directions: addiction, infidelity, mental illness, financial strain, outside interference. What matters isn't that you face these challenges, but how you respond to them. Do you let them destroy you, or do you find a way through? Do you give up when the lies seem overwhelming, or do you keep searching for truth? I'm sharing this story because I want other families to know that survival is possible, recovery is possible, redemption is possible. Even when someone deliberately tries to destroy what you've built, even when the attack comes from someone you trusted, even when you've hurt each other in ways that seem unforgivable. The path forward exists, though it's narrow and steep and full of obstacles. If you're facing your own family crisis, know this: the night I arrested my wife was the worst night of my life, but it was also the beginning of our salvation because it forced us to confront the poison that had been slowly killing our marriage. It exposed the lies that were destroying us from within. It showed us who our real enemy was and gave us the chance to fight back together instead of against each other. Diana is gone from our lives now, serving her court-ordered therapy and banned from any contact with us. But in a strange way, I'm almost grateful to her, not for the pain she caused, but for the wake-up call she provided. She showed us how vulnerable we were, how easily trust could be manipulated, how quickly a family could fall apart. But she also showed us how strong we could be when we faced the truth together. The last time I saw her was at her sentencing hearing. She looked smaller somehow, deflated. The confident woman who'd sat next to me in patrol cars for 3 years was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood the magnitude of what she'd done. When the judge read the sentence, she cried. Not the manipulative tears she'd probably planned, but real, ugly sobs of someone facing consequences for the first time. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just emptiness. She'd already taken enough from us. I wasn't going to give her any more space in my head or heart. Sarah squeezed my hand as we left the courthouse, and we walked into the sunlight together. Free from lies, free from manipulation, free to rebuild our life without looking over our shoulders. That was 2 years ago. Today our life looks nothing like it did before that February night. We live in a different house, have different routines, different friends in some cases. Sarah has been sober for 26 months. I've learned to recognize manipulation and obsession before they escalate. Tyler is a happy, well-adjusted 10-year-old who knows his parents aren't perfect but love him fiercely. We still have hard days, triggers that bring back the trauma, arguments where old wounds reopen, moments of doubt when trust wobbles. But we have more good days than bad now. Days where we laugh at Tyler's jokes, where we dance in the kitchen while making dinner, where we fall asleep grateful for another chance. Days where the past feels like something that happened to other people in another lifetime. Recovery isn't a destination, it's a journey. Some days we stride confidently forward, other days we stumble. But we keep moving, keep growing, keep choosing each other. Because that's what Diana never understood about real love. It's not about possession or fantasy or destroying obstacles. It's about the daily choice to build something together, brick by brick, even when the foundation has been shaken. So that's my story, our story, a family that survived betrayal, addiction, false accusations, and deliberate sabotage. A marriage that died and was reborn stronger. A truth that emerged from carefully constructed lies. If you take nothing else from this, remember, when someone tries to destroy your family with lies, the truth becomes your most powerful weapon. Wield it wisely and never stop fighting for the people you love. Because in the end, that's all that matters. Not the pain you've endured or the mistakes you've made, but the love that survives it all. The love that refuses to let go, even when everything seems lost. The love that rebuilds from ashes and creates something beautiful from destruction. That's the love worth fighting for. That's the love that wins.